Hello everyone, it's your friends, the Session Blood crew. I'm here with Karol. I'm Kieran, aka Mr. Classic, of course, and today we're doing a heavy hitter seal deck, and we've seen some rave reviews around the world. A lot of people calling it the best seal deck experience since Welcome to Wraith. Very high praise.
Yeah, I've actually been to the world premiere and people loved it. So yeah, I'm super excited to show you guys how you can pick up 6 packs and get started.
So if you just want to play at home with some friends, teach people how to play the game, perfect way to start. So without further ado, should we just get into cracking some packs?
Let's do it. One of the things about this set is you have to remember that there's some expansion slot cards. The top 2 cards of each pack you can just discard because even though you might get some Majestics and Legendaries there, and the 2 token piles here, basically these 2 are just unplayable. So it's, yeah, if you hit some money cards, some Marvels or Majestics from the expansion slot, you can just take them aside.
And I know there's been a few questions about how do you lay out the cards in your steel deck, because of course we have a lot of hybrids in this set. But don't worry, Karol's got his patented system that he'd like to share with you today, so he'll be laying out the cards and just giving you sort of a little guide on how to do so.
Yeah, so there's 3 classes and each class has a hybrid, kind of like the 2 hybrid slot between the 2 classes. So the way I like to do it is split it into the 3 classes. So you have the Brute, the Guardian, and the Warrior. And then as you go along, I'll just show you where I like to put. So this, for example, is the first hybrid card, and it's a Brute and a Warrior. So I'm just going to chuck it down here. And once you get to the equipment, I like to use the playmats grid there to kind of lay out my equipment so I know what goes where, how many of each kind of piece of each equipment slot I have available.
So do you have any favorites in Seal that you like to play, or do you just kind of see where the cards take you?
I like to open and look at the cards and then force Kayo anyway. Nah, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of cool things you can do in this format. And because of the specializations, each hero can have a pool that makes it playable.
So I did see at the calling down in Queenstown, there was a pretty good representation split between sort of Guardian, Warrior, and Brute, and a lot of people playing a few different heroes amongst those.
Yeah, the calling had kind of, each class saw very good representation with there being some favorites and some classes. But yeah, as I mentioned before, each hero gets a specialization headpiece, and there's some Majestic specializations as well that make them very, very strong.
Which is kind of nice just to point you in a certain direction if you're not quite sure, right? You're like, hey look, if I've got a temper 2 head, then why not?
Yeah. Looking at these cards, Kieran, I'm just going to slowly do this, but is there anything that kind of draws your attention at the moment?
Well, one thing I'm just looking at is, on the Brute side, I see we have a yellow Wild Rider, yellow Bear Fangs, which are pretty nice in KO because, you know, your 5s basically become 6s through KO's hero ability. I'm also seeing some very nice cards like the red Wage Agility, for example, even the blue Wage Agility. One of the cool things about KO is, as I mentioned, when you have cards like Wild Ride or Bear Fangs, or basically cards that rely on discarding a 6 power, you know what, your 5 powers also work because of his effect that gives them +1.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I just want to point out is like one of the powerhouses of this format, the down but not out red.
Yeah.
Pretty nice to see that one early.
Absolutely, you can kind of play a whole game, regardless of what hero you pick, towards that card and trying to win with that card.
Let's keep on going.
Yeah, so here we have a bigger than big red and a big bob red. And I like these cards in Betsy because even just going first and getting those out on the first turn of the game is just so powerful. Yeah, just the overpower mechanic in this set can be quite good at basically closing out a game.
And stuff like starting stake is quite interesting in some heroes that care a lot about gold, or even if you just want gold. And there we see one of those specialization heads you were talking about earlier.
Knucklehead and no fear. Bam, there we go. Locking in KO straight away.
All right, now we're playing Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, let's see what else we got.
And I've got a cool little surprise coming up in this next pack for you.
Bob. All right, what's the spice, Kieran? What you got for me?
Okay, now unfortunately it's not a card, as you explained, that we can play in our deck, but we did get a cold foil Evo Magneto. So pretty nice. So that's probably not going to go in our deck, but I just thought we had to show it off. Very cool. Okay.
It's awesome that it comes in cold foil.
I think we may have another specialization head coming up.
Oh wow. Another big buff. I just love those cards.
Stuff like Rising Speed as well. It's another thing that interacts quite nicely with gold. So there's a number of cards in the set that have the effect if you've drawn a card. Yep, and there's the Golden Glare. If you've drawn a card, do X. So with Rising Speed, for example, if you've drawn a card this turn, this gets go again. Sometimes it can be very nice, right? If you're cracking a gold, particularly in heroes like Kasai, crack a gold, play this out with go again, and you have your weapons discounted.
As a general rule, kind of like the easiest rule of thumb I have when you're building a sealed pool is just to count up your class cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 is a good number. It kind of indicates that you have a lot of cards in this particular class. And class cards tend to be good, which is kind of gives you an idea of how many playables you can make in your sealed.
It looks like we're sitting at about 9 warrior cards, so it might be
Really?
maybe a little bit light to play
Wow.
to play that in this particular one. Do you want to count up our Guardian cards there?
Yeah, sure thing. 13. So 14 Brute, 13 Guardian, and 9 Warrior.
So we're locking Warrior?
Yeah, so let's just have a look at these. So there is one red attack reaction. Red attack reactions in general are just great in Warrior.
Really strong.
Whether you're playing Kasai or Olympia. Oh, we do have a red Hold'em, but I would immediately just kind of put the Warrior pile aside and be like, you know what, we probably won't have enough playables there.
It's one of those things that sometimes it can be quality over quantity. Like we looked at this pile and we saw like we've got like 5 red attack reactions, we have all the insane hybrid cards, a bunch of lead with speeds and everything, then maybe that would sort of start to change the math a little bit, but if it's 9 cards and they're not absolute bangers, then we may be looking at something else to play.
Yeah, especially because we do have these 2 specializations, which kind of makes me feel like these 2 are probably is going to be where the power lies in this pool.
What we did see in sealed is people tended to trend towards sort of one of the heroes a little bit more than the others within the classes. So for example, I believe there's a bit more Kayo played than Rhinar and a bit more Betsy played than Victor. It is worth checking out when you have things like the specialization head or in Victor, when you have cards, I believe we have a test of strength in here, for example. It's good not to just default and say like, oh, like everyone says Betsy's really strong, so I'll just definitely play that. So not saying you have to just, if you have the specialization head, lock in, but it's worth considering all your options.
And this test of strength is a good example of like a synergy card that, for example, is really strong in Victor but not as good in Betsy because of the extra card draw. And these are the kinds of things that I would look towards for now, kind of once we put one class aside, kind of narrowed it down a little bit, is what synergies do we have? Have a look, for example, for Brutes. A great thing to look at is how many 6 powers you have in total. So 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's it. So we have 8 possible 6 powers. So Rhino would be pretty hard to play in this pool.
Absolutely, because with Rhino, with your hero ability that intimidates, and particularly if you want to rely on cards like Wild Ride for Go Again, Brute's a class that kind of has to work for that a fair bit. So that would probably point us more towards something like Kayo in this instance, wouldn't it? Particularly because we have that specialization head. And I think for Kayo, you mentioned doing a 6 power count for Rhinar. Is that something that you would perform a second time for Kayo, but includes sort of the pseudo 6 powers? So by that I mean the 5 power cards.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19's a pretty good number.
We're not finished yet.
Oh, we're not done yet.
20, 21, that's it. But 21 6 powers is, the pseudo 6 powers for KO. I think that's really strong. You've played some Victor back in your time doing some sealed. Other than the test of strength, what else would you look for if you're choosing to go Victor or not?
One of the sort of slightly more difficult things to play about Victor is he doesn't have that built-in evasion. And by evasion I mean ways to get around your opponent just blocking with multiple cards. You kind of want to have enough big attacks and 3 block cards in order to be able to sort of grind the game out a little bit and be able to generate some value off your hero ability that gets you gold. So cards like Test of Strength, fantastic. You play a Test of Strength, you win that, you say LFG, which means let's find gold, we all know. And also cards like Golden Glare, of course, we want to be looking at how many yellows we're able to play. But also just like I mentioned, I feel the number of 3 blocks, because I feel without that evasion, it's a little more difficult to play this very aggressive game plan. And I think if people, as people have experience who've played this format now across pre-releases at Queenstown, is that there are quite a lot of 2-blocks in the set. It's very hard to, it's hard to play this full fatigue game plan. I'm going to play 40 cards and just defend you out when people are just going lean, mean value machines like Kayo, like Kasai. So if I look at some of the Victor cards in here, we also have things like Thunk, which are very nice if you have enough Clash cards. But what I'm seeing here is a real kind of lack of Clash. So we have...
There's the one Test of Vigor.
Yeah, so we have a Test of Vigor, we have the Test of Strength here. In terms, do we have anything else lying around there?
I feel like that's, and that is something that you would kind of want for a Clash-based hero, right? Those Clash cards.
And in terms of 3 blocks, we sort of have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. I mean, sometimes with Victor as well, you can get there if you just have enough big attacks. So things like this Red Thunk, for example, comes in for 8 damage. But in this instance, I feel like, I know we have the specialization head, but I feel if we're playing Guardian, I'm not sure we have enough to push us in the direction of Victor as opposed to something else. Like for example, even the Wage Gold that we have, it can be very nice if it's a 7 power, because you can go, pitch a blue, play Wage Gold, Wage with you if you have no cards in hand, and if your opponent doesn't full block it out, now I'm getting a card to put in Arsenal. Not as nice with the 5 power one here. In this instance, I feel, particularly when I see that we have some of these Wager cards as well, we have a Wage Might red, we have a Wage Might yellow, even the blues are quite nice and bitsy. Lunging Press as well, very nice.
True.
So I think I would be, if we were playing Guardian, particularly we have things like Big Bop as well.
Yeah, and there's so many of them. There's the Bigger Than Big, we have a blue one, we have a big Bop, another Big Bop. We got 3 red Big Bops and a red Bigger Than Big.
Yeah, so I think that would be pointing me more in the direction of Betsy in this case. I think with Victor, there's certain cards you might open, obviously things like the Golden Sun, which you can really play towards. I think we saw that in the draft portion of the calling. Quid in the final really playing towards his Golden Sun to close games. But I'm not sure we have sort of enough here to necessarily justify playing that deck. We don't have those nice Clash of Vigors, Clash of Mights, things like that. So I'm probably thinking if we're going Guardian, it's hard to turn down all these beautiful Big Bops and Bigger Than Big.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is we have such a good split of equipment for both Guardian and Brute. The Raw Meat, the Vigor Girth, Stand Ground, Great Guardian, Staple, and Flat Trackers for Brute as well. Including a shield. So they're kind of, to me, they're kind of quite evenish. And I feel like this is where kind of like, if you're in a situation like this, I feel like personal preference can come into play. I think both of them are quite strong. And if we look at just the blues, I feel like there's enough to support Betsy. I feel like with Betsy, I do like kind of like around 12-ish blues. I believe we have something around there available for Betsy. But I don't know, I'm a Brute guy, Kieran, and I think it's with 21,
it's really nice. And when we
21 6 powers,
like we mentioned earlier as well, it seems to be people are catching on in this format that you're very capable of playing a clean 30 card deck that's very efficient, like plays towards value, and just saying, look, if you're going to play a lot of 2 blocks, I'm going to come in with 6 or 7 power attacks and give me 2 or 3 cards each time. So I think because we have the Knucklehead, the spec there, like you mentioned, we have the perfect equipment set up. We have Knucklehead, Raw Meat, Gauntlet of Might, and Flat Trackers. We got it all, baby. So I think I'm with you on this one. I think we maybe live the Brute life and look towards building Kayo here.
Yeah, so let's just put all the Guardian and Warrior things aside. And honestly, I would be looking to using all of the 21 pseudo 6 powers. So I'll just lay these out here.
Kind of the last thing you want to happen is you've set up your turn perfectly. Oh yeah, look at this, I'm going wild right into Bare Fangs, it's lethal, and then you draw a brick off the top and you pass the turn. Yeah, so lead with speed, depending on the amount of agility we have access to, is something I would consider because, like I say in Brutes, unless you have sort of a ton of wild rides, sometimes you get the tempo, you have all these cards in hand, and then you're only able to use sort of 2 cards out of your hand, and it doesn't feel the best.
Kind of laying it out here, I am kind of mindful of the amount of blues that we have. We only have 6 at the moment. Cards like this Smashback Alehorn are just great to set up
Absolutely.
Big turns,
Absolutely.
and it's a source of agility, and I feel like that's something that will just make this deck just a little bit stronger.
The other thing I just want to point out quickly is the interaction between, so each of the classes have one of these that make both their tokens, so in Brute's case, might and agility.
Yeah, and it pairs up with this raw meat very nicely.
Absolutely. So if you're going for a little bit of a setup turn, you can play the Smashback Aelhorn, get your 2 tokens to set up for next turn, and then know you have the guaranteed 2 defense on your equipment, which is always really nice.
After this, I would be kind of, it's up to your personal preference of what kind of spice you want to kind of add. I would definitely run 1 lunging. This card just wins games.
Yep.
Things like Rally the Rearguard, good against warriors, and also to get rid of things like Wild Rides from your hand and, turn that into a 3 defense card.
The other card I just wanted to point out as well is Run Into Trouble, which I think is quite a funny card as well, because not only is it a block card, but sometimes it might be one of these things that you just want to put in your deck to try and catch someone out, because a lot of these heavy hitters games, I think what a lot of people love about the format is how close the games are.
Yeah.
Like you have so many matchups that come down to like, I got them down to 1 life, or they got me down to 2 life and this and that. And if your opponent's thinking, okay, I go down to 1, but I've got guaranteed lethal next turn, like I've got them, they can't play around this attack reaction, and suddenly they run into a bit of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just sum it up and have a look. 8 reds, that's a bit low on reds. I would want to include something like we have the kind of defensive package here, the No Fear, the Take It on the Chin, the Reinforce the Line, the Test of Strength as well. I feel like these cards are just great in the deck, and possibly this as well. So depending on the matchups, if you're kind of playing against a Betsy and you're worried, all of these cards can help to defend against Overpower, against warriors as well. And so we have 8 here and 20. 1, 2, 3. So we're just 2 cards off to finishing our deck. So this is the kind of range of cards that I would consider for the deck. All these are great defensive tools, and I feel like you could actually build quite a defensive KO deck with this as well, and leaning on this powerful equipment to defend your opponent out and set up some big turns with things like the Smashback Aelhorn, or something like this Yellow Lead with Speed for like a big powerful turn.
There is just one more card I did want to ask you about, and that's Trade-In. So if you play it, it is a blue, so it counts for a blue count. It's not the best offensive card, but one nice thing about this is it's when it attacks, you may discard a card. If you do draw a card, if it's played from Arsenal, it gets going in. Now, if you're able to set this up in Arsenal, it can be quite sort of a little bit annoying for other players, because firstly it's coming in for 1 damage, and if you're on low life total, sometimes it takes a card. But the important part about this is if you discard a 6 power card, activating Kayo's hero ability, so you're getting your might token for next turn, but more importantly, it gives your Mandible Claw go again.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it definitely has wiggle room to kind of like come in, maybe instead of the lunging press. I feel like both of them kind of have that role of potentially in the second cycle of the deck, just kind of getting your opponent and being that win condition that potentially, takes the game over. Also, Blue Wild Ride, a consideration. Bonebreaker Bellow Yellow, if you decide to go for more defensive, this is a great card against warriors, doesn't proc off sabers. So there's a lot of options here, but I would kind of prioritize the blues and then maybe some of these red defensive cards.
You might sort of chop and change depending on the matchup. So maybe you bring in your block cards for Betsy, maybe you bring in your instant defensive cards for Warrior to play around their attack reactions, and then maybe you have a few little tech cards here and there like the Wild Ride, the Lunging Press, the Trade-In and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, in the sealed, it's also there to have a bit of fun. So if you really like some cards and really want to play them, I think it's a great way to kind of experiment and chuck them in and kind of see how they go.
Absolutely. The last thing I just wanted to ask you, we've talked a little bit about how many cards you would play in your deck for this sort of format. Is Kayo a hero that you generally like to try and keep it to sort of a tight 30 card limit, or do you are you playing 35, 40 cards?
It does depend on the matchup, I think. And honestly, with this particular pool, if you prioritize the defense values, you could go up to 40. You have to remember that the more cards you put in, the more you're diluting your ratio with sixes and non-sixes. So.
Because as great as some of these cards are, you kind of don't want to draw a hand of starting stake, Test of Strength, Reinforce the Line, and a Bonebreaker Bellow.
Exactly. That's why I kind of have them to the side so you can pick and choose which ones you want for what matchup. But yeah, there you go. I feel like this, here you have a KO deck that can function like exceptionally well. You have an amazing suite of equipment, 21 6 powers, which is just of pure gas. So yeah, I feel like I'd be extremely happy with this pool.
Okay, Karol, I'm going to put you on the spot. You turn up to the calling, you open this pool. What are you going? 8 rounds day 1. What's your record?
8-0.
That's what I think. Yeah, good man.
This pool would not lose again.
There you have it, the Karol guarantee. Anyway, I think that's it from us. The most important thing, like we said, is get out there, have some fun. It's a fantastic sealed format. It's really great to play. I mean, play it around the kitchen table, go to a calling, play it at your local armories. Just get out there and have fun with it. Hey, if you have friends who've been wanting to get into Flesh and Blood but haven't been sure at the right time, I would say this is the absolutely perfect set for it. Just a lot of Flesh and Blood fundamentals, lots of really close games, lots of fun with wager, clashes off the top. Oh no, he got me. Like, so much cool stuff to do. So that's it from us. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck at all your events out there.
Good luck.